Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed our review week this week in science and all the subjects. And so it's been a pretty easy week, but I hope you've learned a lot still because we've done some interesting lessons. Today we are looking at a food web. Yesterday was a food chain, which is one line of the energy flow going from one animal to another animal to another animal. A food web looks a bit different. It's got arrows going everywhere. That's why it's called a food web instead. So the standard for a food web says this: using information about the roles of organisms, here's those three words we looked at yesterday: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Evaluate how those roles in food chains are interconnected in a food web, and communicate how the organisms are continuously able to meet their needs in a stable food web. So that's kind of confusing, isn't it? Basically, in a food web, what we see is this. Animals are eating more than one animal in that food chain we looked at yesterday. Like the grasshopper was being eaten only by the frog. The frog was being eaten only by the snake. The snake was being eaten only by the snapping turtle. In this, you see two arrows going to the same thing. In some cases, even three appear to the grouper. So you've got shrimp, crab, and toadfish all being eaten by the grouper. So that standard basically is saying as long as the population of everything stays the same, it's a stable food web. In other words, it's going to stay like this. But what if one thing changes? What if all the crabs die? Well, then the toadfish has less to eat, and the grouper has less to eat, and there'd be more algae because crabs eating algae, and there'd be more algae because there's not crabs eating it. So things can change if a certain population within a food web is gone or decreases. And that's what this question talks about from your benchmark. This is a hard question, I won't lie. These kind of questions are probably some of the harder questions in science because you really have to evaluate the chart. You really have to think through where these lines are going. So the question says this: lionfish are not naturally part of this ecosystem. In other words, in this ecosystem where all these animals live, there's usually not any lionfish. And lionfish have the same diet as toadfish. So they're going to eat the same things and be eaten by the same things. Oops, and it says, and are not eaten by other fish. So lionfish are not going to be eaten by groupers, okay? So we've got toadfish and lionfish, but lionfish are going to be eating the same things. So we know lionfish, it says, eat the same thing as toadfish. So they're going to be eating the crab, and they're going to be eating the shrimp. And then it says, which two things will most likely occur if lionfish were added to this ecosystem? Okay, well, let's see. The grouper population would increase. Well, remember, lionfish are not eaten by other fish. So even though there's lionfish here, the grouper is not going to eat them. So I don't know that the grouper would increase. The toadfish population would decrease. That's definitely going to be one because now the toadfish have to compete with another type of fish that are eating the same thing that it eats. The lionfish is going to be eating some of the toadfish's crabs. And the lionfish is going to be eating some of the toadfish's shrimp. So now the toadfish isn't going to have as much to eat, so their population will decrease. So this would be one of them. The algae population will decrease. Well, let's see. If we've got a toadfish and a lionfish eating shrimp and crabs, and the shrimp and crabs are eating the algae, but we've got an extra fish eating them, then there's going to be less shrimp and less crabs, so there will be more algae, right? Okay. So, fourthly, the shrimp population will increase. Okay, well, if there's toadfish and lionfish eating shrimp, then it looks like the shrimp population would decrease. You know, I don't like this question one bit because it asks you for two things that would occur if lionfish are added to this ecosystem. The only one I think that is right is this: the toadfish population will decrease. Unless I'm just missing something and I'm the teacher and I'm not seeing any reason. I would think that the grouper population would increase if it ate the lionfish, because now it can eat toadfish and lionfish. But it says that they're not eaten by other fish. Lionfish have the same diet as toadfish, but they're not eaten by other fish. So the lionfish is not going to add extra food for the grouper to eat. The algae population will decrease. Why would it go down if there's more shrimp and crab being eaten? It would go up because there's less shrimp and crab eating it. The shrimp population will increase. No, because you've got toadfish and lionfish eating the shrimp. The only thing that I could think of would be if the grouper is able to eat more, but he's not eating more lionfish because he doesn't eat lionfish. So I don't think any of these are right except for B, or the second one. The toadfish population will decrease. That's the only one that I could see would happen in this chart. So I'm going to check on that and see if this question's a mistake, actually. And I didn't catch that till just now as I was going over it with you, but I'll go back and double check this, okay? But that's a food web. The main idea is I want you to understand what a food web is, and you got to see my thinking as I thought through this, and you see how complicated it can be. So you really have to think through this. So again, this is one of those things like the food chain that we've not gone over before the benchmark, so don't feel bad about it. I am going to go check and see if this question is wrong that was on the benchmark, because I only think there's one correct answer, unless I'm just missing something. Okay? Well, you're going to see a video today on food webs. I think you'll enjoy this. You see all the different lines connected everywhere, because in a food web, many things are eating other things. Because in life, you don't just eat one thing, do you? You eat several things. You're going to have a song on food webs called Energy Flow. And then once again today, you can finish out science. Once you've watched the videos, please, then you can click on this link and play a game on food webs. Okay? Enjoy your day. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.